Hey again, everyone. It's great to see you out there on a Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern Time here at MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Lock it in. Give us a like, a comment, share your thoughts, share the videos out on social media, subscribe right here. And that way, you know when we're going live, as we do with SEC Football Talk each and every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock. A lot of the shows, however, have to float based on schedules. Therefore, you subscribe, hit the bell for the notifications. You know when we go live. Much happening across college football in terms of off the field that will affect on the field. We learned earlier today Nick Saban has tested positive for COVID. That's not a false positive, and based on the circumstances that do not reflect what happened a few weeks ago against Georgia leading into that game, we will not see Nick Saban on the sideline in the Iron Bowl. A strange occurrence. Also some issues possibly with Kentucky and Florida. We got David Waters on the line from Gators Breakdown. Of course, you got to check out his show on a regular basis, your favorite audio platform. He's on all of them. It's rated highly by people across the board. It's exploding, Gators Breakdown. So if you like the audio version, go to your favorite audio platform, look it up, or right here on YouTube. Dave, how you doing tonight?
Doing pretty good. Ready for the holiday, of course, Thanksgiving. So everybody, happy Thanksgiving. Stay safe. Thanks to you, Mark, of course, for having me on every week, and thanks to everybody out there who's no matter what fan base you're a part of. Thanks for all the interaction and all that good stuff. But thankful we've had a little bit of football this season, Mark. But man, it just seems every day now we're just getting news of postponements, cancellations, moving around, and we'll see where it goes.
Let's get to football because really everything's speculation. So the only thing that David and I can tell you right now is that there's been much talk concerning the Florida-Kentucky game in Gainesville and the possibility of that one being canceled as well, unless you have anything else to add to that.
Well, Mark, what came out today was, let me make sure I read it right. Mark Stoops said Kentucky has 18 players and 10 staff members out due to COVID, and that's injuries as well. So it's combining all that, but that still hits your roster number that you got to have to play a game. So whether it be injuries and COVID, you have to combine it all. And so Kentucky was only missing 10 players, COVID injury related last week against Alabama, jumped that up 8 more to 18 now for Florida. So, there's definitely some discussions behind the scenes of can they play this game? So as of Wednesday night, no decision's been made yet. That's when we're recording this, but we'll say it's definitely being discussed behind the scenes. We'll see where it shakes out. Mark, that raises a lot of questions. If Florida can't play Kentucky this week, that leaves 3 games that were on the schedule left to play in 2 weeks. It'd be Kentucky, Tennessee, and LSU. 2 of those are division games. Kentucky, Tennessee, I would think those take precedent and just deciding who tries to win the East. You already have a win over Georgia. If you go undefeated the rest of the way in the East, I would assume you're probably SEC East champ. So I would think the East games, the division games, would take precedent over Florida playing LSU. But I'm sure there's a lot of this is a chain reaction. You got to figure out how this affects other teams as well when you're trying to schedule so many games in a short window. So we'll have to see how everything lines up now if Florida and Kentucky can't play on Saturday.
Yeah, I would think that the SEC would prioritize, of course, like you just said, the division games and also games that affect the championship race. Of course, those all involve Florida. Also, the Big Ten announced at the unveiling of its schedule that there would have to be a minimum number of games played to qualify for the conference championship game. Does the SEC, have they held to any specific standard there?
I don't think so, Mark. It may be out there. I don't have that memorized. If there is a limited number of games, I don't remember that part. And I know just because they had scheduled so far in advance and pretty much had planned on something like this happening, of course, there was an original bye week built in for teams, and then they gave that December 12th date as a makeup date as well. So they kind of had two windows there. So I don't remember offhand, but I don't think they even put that out there as far as a minimum number of games having to be played.
And even if there is, I would think that Florida's right in that range. Again, I'm going to go back to the Big Ten model. They've scheduled 8 games. It's really 9 with championship weekend and everybody playing that weekend. So 9 games, and Wisconsin is in jeopardy, but they need a minimum of 5. So if you liken that ratio to what's going on in the SEC, Florida's played 7 games, right? They're 6-1.
Right. Yeah.
And,
played 7 games. You have to imagine they'll at least play one more. Like, puts them at 8. 8 out of 10. Go by winning percentage at that point, probably, and just enough.
So, was there anything against Vandy that made you feel any differently about this team, the progress of the team, the progress of some of the concerns that you've had? Of course, they jump out to a 10-7 deficit of sorts. The first time that Vanderbilt has been in the lead in the first quarter against a top 10 team since I think I saw 2012 in the first quarter. So Vandy enjoyed that for a few minutes. And then, of course, Florida took over. It wasn't a complete annihilation by any stretch. Pretty competitive game, but Florida took charge at 31-10, 38-17 final. Your thoughts about that performance and anything that really matters down the road?
As Dan Mullen said, it was a ho-hum performance. The team didn't even dress in Vanderbilt's locker room. They said, that Vanderbilt visiting locker room is very tiny. Florida's already dealt with the COVID issues. So Dan Mullen said, okay, well, we'll prepare as we won't even use that locker room. So Florida showed up about an hour before kickoff, off the bus. Cleats were already on and taped up. They were in their warm-up shorts and shirts, went and warmed up, put pads on, and went and played a game. You could probably excuse some sort of slow start there, just given the nature there. Doesn't excuse, Mark, some of the issues that we saw on defense. They could be connected, but some of the issues we saw on defense are issues that we've seen all season. Not lining up before the snap, looking confused on defense, missing tackles, taking wrong angles. Those are issues we've seen defense all year, and we saw it again versus Vanderbilt early on. They did settle down. The last 8 drives for Vanderbilt didn't amount much to anything, but Florida's got to get off to better starts, Mark. I think there's only 2 games this season where the opponent didn't score an opening drive touchdown on this Florida defense. So out of 7 games, 5 teams have scored opening drive touchdowns on this Florida defense, and it hasn't hurt them all too much, of course. A&M was one of those teams that didn't score. Never mind. Ole Miss and Missouri, my bad. Ole Miss and Missouri were the teams. A&M did. But Florida was still in that game, so it's not like it really hurt them all that much anyway. So the games you've won, teams have scored, on that first drive, it didn't really hurt you. But it's still something you'd like to, for at least maybe a confidence booster for this defense, is get out there, get off to a fast start, and have, offenses have to fight from behind a little bit. But, hasn't really hurt the offense, the Florida offense. They go out there and they score early in games, put up points early. And, it was a slow start for Kyle Trask, probably the slowest start he's had all season. But, Mark, his worst performance of the season probably, and he still threw for 380 yards, 3 touchdowns, and, still played a really, really good game, even though standard for this season, it was probably one of the lower parts of this. But made some really good throws, made some really great decisions, solidified himself again as a Heisman contender. And receivers, tight ends, it doesn't, without Kyle Pitts out there, can keep showing up. Just get a team, got some things to work on the next few weeks in preparation for Alabama. Defense has to play better against Alabama. You want some young players out there who probably deserve a little bit more play time this point in the season. You want to see them out there get their legs under them by the time you go to Atlanta and play Alabama. But Mark, that's really all it is. It's Florida trying to find ways to get better in preparation for Alabama.
Got David Waters on the line from Gators Breakdown. Florida scheduled to play at noon Eastern time on Saturday against Kentucky at home. I had a couple of Florida callers this week who were adamant about just the sheer pass rush ability of some of the guys that have moved on from last year's team, covering up for Todd Grantham's mistakes and just having the talent override some questionable schemes and decisions.
Well, let's not forget they also lost C.J. Henderson on the back end, who was a first, a top 10 pick. So it wasn't just up front. Now, don't get me wrong, that made a huge difference. Jonathan Grenard, Jabbar Zuniga, were some really good players up front. But Florida also lost a top 10 draft pick on the back end. And CJ Henderson didn't have his best year last year, but he was still really good, and teams still threw away from him. They still wasn't throwing at him over and over again. So, I'll give some credit to that back end as well. But it does seem like Todd Grantham's defense is based way too much on that front end. Now, don't get me wrong. All defenses work better when you're getting pressure up front. But you have to adjust. I mean, Dan Mullen's done a great job of adjusting on offense with the talent that he's given. He's completely changed his offensive system to fit a quarterback. Todd Grantham even said it this week. Well, I've had top 10 defenses everywhere I've been. And so pretty much saying my defense is good enough, guys just got to come along. Well, you also have a player out there being asked, how hard is this defense to learn on a scale of 1 to 10? And he says it's a 10. So there's got to be a meeting in the middle somewhere. And I know it sounds like if you don't follow Florida and on the base, Florida's only lost one game. It may sound like nitpicking because Florida's still in the mix of playing for an SEC championship and a college football playoff spot. But you got to project a little bit. And the way this defense is playing now is not going to beat Alabama. That's not to say they can't get better and then go beat Alabama. But as of right now, this defense is not good enough. Now, does Florida have a good enough offense to go get in a shootout with Alabama and win that game? Absolutely. But I think you have to kind of just take a whole team look approach and say, all right, Alabama, Florida, the offense, neck and neck. You can pick one week, you can pick another one the next week, and it's right there. But right now, you see that Alabama defense getting better, and you're not seeing that from the Florida defense.
Yeah, ever since they stepped off the field against Ole Miss, meaning Alabama, they have really ramped it up. We've seen this happen in previous seasons for Alabama where they've shown some defensive deficiencies midway, early season, and then they address them, and they do a phenomenal job of doing so.
And LSU last year, another example of a defense finding their way. So that's kind of what you hope for. I've probably seen more comparisons of LSU last year and Florida this year more so than I have LSU last year and Alabama this year. So if you kind of still want to keep that comparison, this Florida defense is going to have to get better step by step, game by game.
So who's capable of putting that heat on the quarterback consistently? Who are the one or two players that, whether they're doing it right now or not, have the ability to be those guys?
Mark, that's the crazy thing. Florida leads the SEC in sacks.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
and these are all SEC games, so the stats actually are more relevant this year than they've ever been.
Right. Last year, you had 18 sacks combined between FSU and Miami games. But this year, Florida leads the SEC in sacks, but it's not necessarily translating to a great back end defensive performance. So could you be more consistent? Before this year, it was, hey, can you go get pressure on Georgia and LSU and those type of teams? Well, okay, they did that. And like I said, they're pressuring the quarterback. I'm pretty sure they lead the SEC in tackles for loss too. So creating havoc, this Florida defense is still really good at. It's not translating to third down plays. The defense, probably part of the reason, the biggest issue for Florida right now, it's just not enough aggression on defense. The play calls are kind of soft. The zones are kind of soft. They're playing so far off of the receivers, and I don't get it. And I know Todd Grantham's not a man-up defense type of defensive coordinator. It's not his MO. He's more of a zone and of kind of play tighter windows and react. Well, those windows aren't tight for whatever reason. And I don't know if the players don't believe in the defense, they don't believe in their own talent for whatever reason, but you have athletes. When you're playing teams like Vanderbilt and Kentucky and teams that, there's only a couple teams out there Florida doesn't out-recruit out there in the SEC. You can play more man defense with the athletes that you have on defense, and we're not seeing it. But Mark, to answer your question, Brenton Cox, Zach Carter, probably your two big guys up front who can go get the quarterback. We're starting to see Chris Bogle had a really good game, I thought, last week versus Vanderbilt. Showed some early pressure in that game. Starting to see some young guys emerge as well. Mamu Diabate, if they would rush him a little bit more, I think he could get to the quarterback, but they're asking him to play linebacker and a bit more now because of some injuries. He's having to play some linebacker, but those guys in particular to go get the quarterback.
Sounds like you need to go get Don Brown from Michigan to coordinate your defense, because that's all he knows how to do is play man-to-man, even when he doesn't have the athletes to do that. And then
Right. Not to make it sound like that's just a pure answer. Of course, you have to mix it up a bit. But I'm just saying, with Florida's athletes and a lot of the teams that you play, you can do it. You can do it more.
And especially since you're not the Kentucky Vanderbilt that doesn't have the offense, that you're trying to squeeze the game and limit the number of plays and do the offense is going to put up 2 touchdowns in the first quarter anyway. So why not force the opposing offense to show, and the quarterback to show that he can make those throws over the top, and let somebody get burned once or twice before you're like, okay, we need to scale it back and play some of those zones.
Yeah. It's been the up-tempo. That's probably the biggest thing. The up-tempo offenses have really hurt Florida, and they kind of just settle down and find their way. But as up-tempo offenses through 7 games of the year, Mark, you shouldn't have those lineup issues and wondering if you're playing man or zone or who's covering the guy next to you. That shouldn't be happening in Game 7, let alone year 3 of a defense that has plenty of guys who have played in this defense before. You could give me the COVID excuse toward the beginning of the season. You can't give it to me 7 games into the season right now.
And 7 games into a season in which they've had gaps in the schedule that they could certainly pull together a lot of film, pull together a lot of instructor time as, in units to say, hey, this is what we need to work on. So it's,
I hate to sound like a complainer. I mean, this is a top 10 team that still has everything to play, but you're looking for the next step that's going to make Florida a national championship contender. That's it.
And you're playing in a conference with the team that's playing the best football right now.
Correct. You have to be nitpicky.
Yeah, if you want to reach your goals, you have to, because it's looking like a tremendous game right now. But if they do come in both playing exactly the way they're playing on offense and defense, then Bama wins this game like 52-40. They win by 2 scores. Exactly. Florida scoring plenty of points, but they're also getting just shredded.
Yeah.
I got to think that you're okay with the initial college football playoff ranking. Seems pretty fair. They lost to Texas A&M straight up.
Yeah, no issue there. I mean, if you wanted to be, the crazy thing about it right now, if Florida wins that game, they're probably second behind Alabama, probably in the college football playoff. But still, it doesn't. The only way that game hurts you now is you maybe could have afforded a loss to Alabama in the SEC championship game and still gotten in. So now your margin of error is you got to go beat Alabama and get in there. But here's my thought about that. Eventually, you're going to have to beat Alabama anyway. Now you may have to do it twice this time, but you're eventually going to have to beat Alabama anyway. More than likely, if you were going to win or somebody else was going to have to beat them for you, and you play that team in the final. But more than likely, you were going to have to beat an Alabama team anyway.
That's it. David Waters, Gators Breakdown. Please check him out on your favorite audio platform, even if you're not a Florida football fan, because we, of course, have fan bases represented all over the place here. But you love football, love college football, try to keep up with all the Blue Bloods, all the great programs. Check out David's podcast, whether it be the video here on YouTube or, again, on your favorite audio platform, Gators Breakdown. David, appreciate it every time. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks, Mark. You too, man.
And we continue here at SEC Live. So we have started the show 7 weeks ago, and we invite our friends from across the SEC to come on and share their thoughts on this week's games. And hopefully we've got games to play. Right now, the Iron Bowl will be played between Alabama and Auburn. Nick Saban has stated, in addition to his positive COVID test, that he says no Alabama players have tested positive. That's as of a few hours ago. The latest reports. As David stated, Kentucky, Florida in limbo, with Kentucky testing positive 10 players last week, 18 players currently. They're on the line, and it could be a difficult game to kick off in Gainesville at noon Eastern time. This is Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We got some folks on the line. Please join in the live chat. I will answer any questions that you have. So basically, for the next hour, something in that range, we invite your thoughts, your comments, your opinions, your questions, your debate topics, anything from me. In between, I will take phone calls, but we've got a number of SEC writers lined up, and there is one thing I have to do offline here to safeguard the show, so I will be in the process of doing that as well. Hope you checked out our Florida State show at 6 o'clock Eastern time. That was a good time with Jason Parker and Logan Robinson from Knoll Game Day. We had fun. Jason and I got into it, so you may want to check that out. And we also did Ohio State Live earlier today. Now, the only way that these shows are going to continue is with sponsor support and your support. So if you can certainly find it within yourself to contribute. So individual donations that come via the Super Chat. And if Gator Zone is on the line, I believe he asked in the previous show how he can contribute because the Super Chat, for whatever reason, was not working. So I apologize for that. If Gator Zone is watching, and hopefully he is, because we were just talking Florida football. You can also contribute, as somebody very nicely did just yesterday, on Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal. And it's really the only way we can continue these shows when you think about this as a business. And the folks that come on here and give up their expertise and their time is through your individual contributions, or hopefully in addition to that, sponsorships. So if you know anybody out there that owns a business that could benefit from being a sponsor here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, and they don't necessarily have to line up with what we're doing right now. If you know a business, or you yourself own a business that you would love to support USC, Clemson, LSU, Oklahoma, and we don't currently do a team-specific show for that team, we will do it if you get us a sponsor. So, and any questions, any comments, recommendations, anything related, just contact me at MarkRogersTV, MarkRogersTV at Gmail. Good stuff. We believe we'll have Palmer Toms on from Dogs 247 Sports to talk Georgia football, and of course, JT Daniels' debut against Mississippi State with over 400 yards passing. But that Georgia running game could only mount about 10 yards rushing, which is a shock. When was the last time Georgia ran for 10 yards in a football game? Would love to know that. Can't imagine. It's been since Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, DeAndre Swift, and company. Also, Kevin McGuffey from Last Word on College Football, maybe to fill in some more blanks concerning the Kentucky COVID situation right now, reporting 18 players and staff members that will be ineligible to take the field or travel this weekend to Gainesville. But as of right now, Kentucky, Florida is still playing. Also, even with it being Thanksgiving, we will be here at 6 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow. Our Nebraska Cornhusker faithful are prepared to do our show. Nebraska Live, Thanksgiving night, 6 o'clock Eastern time. All right, what else do you guys have here for us? Luke has let us know that Ohio State has some positive tests out there that have been reported. I had a dreaded water spill here at the desk. It's causing me some havoc right now. But we will persevere, of course. We got Luke on the line, Joe, Adrian, good to see you. Confident about winning a national championship at Florida. Also, George, of course, has to love the conversation on Florida football. And look at this. We got Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama calling us in. So let's hear from Stephen M. Smith. Hello, Stephen. How are you?
Doing good, and yourself?
I am doing just fine. Just want to let you know that you are on live, so I appreciate you calling in for the big SEC show.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So unfortunately, the big news this afternoon for the second time this season is that Nick Saban has tested positive for COVID. Unfortunately, there are some differences between this situation and the one prior to the Georgia game that will keep Nick Saban off the field, off the sidelines, and at home quarantined this Saturday for the Iron Bowl.
Absolutely. This time around, according to a press release from the University of Alabama, and this came from Dr. Jimmy Robinson and athletic trainer Jeff Allen, he is experiencing, by he, referring to Nick Saban, he is experiencing some mild symptoms of COVID. So Coach Saban is in isolation. He is at home. He is inside of his personal bubble right now. But like he did the first time during the week of the Georgia game, though that test became a false positive, but he has still appointed Steve Sarkisian to be the one to lead the program in the 85th Iron Bowl against Auburn.
Well, let's talk about the football game with Steve Sarkisian on the sideline leading the troops into battle in the Iron Bowl. This is unlike any other spectacle in college football played in Tuscaloosa this year. A 3-4 record does not necessarily impress anyone unless you really understand the landscape of Auburn, Alabama, and that nobody has had that kind of record of success against Nick Saban since he's been in Tuscaloosa, but Auburn winning 3 of the last 7 since Gus Malzahn's been on the Plains. Your thoughts about the recent games?
The recent games, they have all been wild, Mark. All of the recent games have been wild here in this rivalry. I mean, especially going back to the 2017 matchup always kind of catches my attention because of the fact that, Jalen Hurts kind of put up strong numbers statistically, but the idea was, is he limiting Alabama's offense? Is he hampering Alabama's passing game? If a Tide not able to have that balance to stretch the field vertically as it would like to, if it in that game against the Tigers, Kerryon Johnson, went off 30 carries for 104 yards, 1 touchdown. And then, of course, Jarrett Stidham had 12 carries for 51 yards and a score to his credit. The Auburn defense put the clamps on Alabama. Jalen Hurts could not do anything out there on the field, and Auburn gets the 26-14 win. And, of course, it went on to play for the SEC championship. Now, of course, Georgia won that game, but Auburn was involved in that match. It's been some wacky games in the last recent years, but that 2017 matchup always pokes out to me as the one where Alabama offensively could not establish any type of creativity, and Auburn was just handing the ball off to Kerryon Johnson and took full control pace of that game.
So let's look at this year's matchup. Auburn with 2 losses, could have lost a 3rd game against Arkansas, seemed to be playing better football, though, as of late. Bo Nix playing more consistent football than he certainly did last year. Your thoughts about the matchup? What could cause some concern for Alabama?
Well, 2 things. Number one, if you look at the backs that Auburn brings into this game, Tank Bigsby, the true freshman, DJ Williams, and Sean Shivers. And even if Bigsby is not able to play in this game, he did sustain a lower body injury against Tennessee on last week and did not return to action. Gus Malzahn and company have been monitoring him all this week in practice. So even at the time of the true freshman does not play, DJ Williams brings a lot of power to the table. Sean Shivers, a lot of speed, some shiftiness, the ability to bounce off tackles, kind of be that pinball type of player. And this is a big game for Alabama's defensive line. We know what Auburn typically likes to do. They like to go motion, a lot of movement, a lot of eye candy looks there prior to the snap of the football. Alabama can follow the flow of the ball, get penetration into the backfield, stuff this run game, or put the clamps on these Auburn running backs. The defensive line, the eye discipline, gap discipline, that's going to be important. But also mark the linebacker play, the inside linebacker play of Christian Harris and Dylan Moses, first and foremost, where these two have got to fly in the gaps. They got to dissect the ball. They got to make plays in the backfield. But most importantly, keep Bo Nix from breaking contain of the pocket. When he gets outside the pocket, that's where his Johnny Manziel type of feel comes to play. He can break outside the pocket. He can run. He is highly athletic. When he breaks outside the pocket, you start to see receivers work their way back to him and trying to catch the football. So this is a big moment for, Christian Harris, Dylan Moses, Christopher Allen, and Will Anderson, your outside and inside linebackers for Alabama, not just to fly into the backfield and make plays, but contain that edge when Bo Nix has the football and not allow him to freelance outside the pocket there.
Have you seen any difference in this offense since Jalen Waddle went down?
There's a slight difference. You don't have, outside Devontae Smith, Alabama's looking to find that second receiver that can vertically stretch the field and take the top off an opposing defense. And, of course, right now, Alabama's been working with John Mechie. He's had some good games this season. Of course, last week against Kentucky, not his best matchup. We know what Slade Bolden can provide, but he's more of a possession receiver, a guy that can run the slant route, the drag route, kind of that in-between type guy. So after Devontae Smith, Alabama's kind of trying to push and look for who's the second guy that can vertically stretch this field and put some pressure on defenses. Now, Javon Baker, the true freshman out of Powder Springs, Georgia, by the way, of McEachern High School, he's got that type of ability, and Alabama has been getting him on the field as of late, but has not, thrown the ball in his direction. Could this be a situation where he can get more on the field? I'll be looking to see, that in this match against Auburn. But as of right now, with the loss of Jalen Waddle, the thing with Alabama is trying to find that number 2 guy opposite Devontae Smith that can really do some damage here to opposing defenses.
It is, of course, odd to think that Alabama and Auburn will be playing other games after, hopefully, if everybody stays healthy. They will be playing other games after the Iron Bowl. Of course, this is a traditional matchup to conclude the season, the regular season for these teams. We know the obvious football talent on the field that's brought to the field by these two programs and all the NFL players that are going to be running around as they do each and every year. Give the folks out there, because I had a taste of it for 6 to 7 years in SEC country, covering this game and covering the SEC as a whole. And I like to tell people this story just to give them some kind of inkling into the rivalry. I was driving back from Ohio to my home in Mississippi at the time, and this was in the middle of the summer. This is like in June, when most people aren't thinking any thought of college football. I pick up a radio station while I'm in like Kentucky or Tennessee, and they are talking for hours about Alabama and Auburn in the middle of June. So, Stephen, if you can give some of the folks that have never been around the rivalry, we only see it on television, just some perspective on how big it is.
I'll say this right now, Mark, the rivalry has even hit my own household. On this past Sunday, I was visiting my parents in Marion, Alabama, Perry County, which is an hour south of Tuscaloosa, and my mom made this great Sunday dinner, and I'm eating my dinner. I definitely enjoyed that, and I'm trying to, have some quality time with my father, who's sitting on the couch, and I go to shake his hand, and my father then proceeds to look at me and go, "Stephen, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Dad, I'm trying to shake your hand." He says, "Stephen, we are enemies this week. No, don't try that with me this week. We are enemies. I'm an Auburn fan. You cover Alabama. You know what this is. I don't have time to shake your hand. Don't speak to me this week. Don't look in my direction this week. We are enemies this week." So in my own household, could not shake my father's hand there, as he viciously reminded me of the importance of this week.
Okay, that depicts it right there. Enough said. Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama. I encourage everybody to hop on over to touchdownalabama.com. Stephen, let the folks know where they can find you here on YouTube. Stephen's got an outstanding call-in show a few times a week.
Absolutely. They can find me on YouTube. That's Touchdown Alabama Magazine on YouTube. That is Touchdown Alabama Magazine. And the show is entitled In My Own Words. It's In My Own Words, Stephen M. Smith. We do the call-in show 3 days a week That's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. The show starts at 6 p.m. Central Time. Encourage all callers to come in and just discuss all angles of Tide football.
All right, Stephen, thank you so much. Have a happy, joyous Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it.
Our guy, Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown, Alabama. Of course, it's the week of the Iron Bowl, one of the great spectacles in college football and in sports in Tuscaloosa this year. All right, Dominic, thank you so much for the comment that you made on during the last show. I believe you commented during the Florida State show. I apologize that I wasn't able to get to that, but Miami Marlins fan, Dominic, you can reach me at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. So anything you need to communicate to me, just send me an email at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. All right, we got LSU and Texas A&M lined up for Saturday as well. This more of a burgeoning rivalry in the SEC that the SEC is kind of staged because of the location of the two schools, because of their past series, Texas A&M LSU, where LSU was facing Arkansas in this slot on Friday after Thanksgiving for many years. Now it's a Texas A&M LSU affair with Arkansas taking on Missouri as their traditional rival. We've got Lon Phillips Sullivan on the line, I believe, from LSU Odyssey to join us and to talk some LSU Tigers. Lon, can you hear me?
Absolutely. How you doing, Mark?
I am doing just fine. I would love to be able to see you, but if we can get the audio, we're good with that.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on with the...
That's fine. Oh, Lon left us there for a second. He's going to try to kick it back in. Lon, we're okay. We'll take you any way we can get you.
This is bizarre. I don't know what's going on, but yeah. I guess you'll see me and Chelsea there. Weird picture of us there, I guess.
I don't know if you can see me, but I am staging the LSU helmet behind
There we go.
so we can properly have this conversation.
Oh, yeah, I see you. That nice, Mark. Front and center LSU helmet, baby. Hey, number 5 Texas A&M going into Kyle Field. It's going to be a very, very, very interesting matchup. Not a favorable matchup for LSU, you would say.
And that's very odd in that just 1 year ago, it was not a favorable matchup for Texas A&M. 50-7, a very talented Texas A&M team getting throttled by, and that showing us just how dominant that LSU bunch was certainly last year.
Oh, yeah. And we're not really putting that on a cup. We don't need to commemorate 50-7 on a cup like Texas A&M. We can just take that. That game was really more about the Burrow jersey before the game. That was really what that was about. It was more a capper. But this game really this is important to LSU's future and especially recruiting, in my opinion. We do not want to start losing recruits to Texas A&M. They have a very improving defense. They have the number 1 defense in the SEC right now. I think it was 6 interceptions and 4 fumbles as well. Just 4 forced turnovers below LSU, but still they're up there in the turnover department. They're keeping opponents down on the yards. I think it was only 250 yards allowed through the air a game, which is almost 100 yards less than LSU's. LSU's actually allowing 807 more yards of total offense than Texas A&M. And if you were to tell me that at the beginning of this year, I would have laughed. But here it is, and Texas A&M, their defense has improved, and we got to give them kudos.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you bring up about recruiting, because I was going to ask you about the flavor of this. Again, I called it a burgeoning rivalry while I was in the midst of welcoming you to the show, because it's not been a long-standing rivalry. But even when Texas A&M was in the Big 12, they did schedule some non-conference games against LSU, and of course they're in close proximity geographically, so it does make sense for the SEC to line these two schools up. And it's been a series that LSU has had a huge upper hand in.
Oh, yeah. And, everyone likes to remember the 74-72 game, of course, but usually it's been Texas A&M just suffering at the hands of LSU, even during the Johnny Manziel era. I think he did get us one of those years, I think in his Heisman year, but still, usually that was LSU getting the last laugh, even against Manziel. They haven't had the best of luck against LSU. Even Kellen Mond, he threw 6 touchdowns against LSU, again in that 74-72 game. But last year he threw for 3 interceptions, 0 touchdowns. So you see both styles of Kellen Mond there. Has Kellen Mond matured as a quarterback? Can he complete those passes? Here's the thing: LSU, if you throw a pass over 20 yards, they're crapping themselves. They're probably allowing a touchdown there. Felipe Franks was 5 for 5 for almost 200 yards on passes over 20 yards in the last week's game against Arkansas. That's Felipe Franks. Texas A&M, it looks like Kellen Mond's passing for 8.17 yards per attempt. They're only passing for 254.5 per game, but we know that that's not completely what is, the composite of their game. It's a lot of rushing attacks. And Ainias Smith, this guy is, I heard a Texas A&M fan earlier say that he is the closest thing the SEC has seen since Percy Harvin, and I would have to agree. Ainias Smith is totally in that Percy Harvin mold. He leads the team in receiving, 312 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns. He has 187 rushing yards as well. This guy, every touch he has, 7 touchdowns total. It's just 8.3 yards per touch. That guy is a danger man for LSU. LSU has got to get it right at safety this game. Todd Harris, I don't know if he should be in there still. A lot of big plays went right down his alley at the free safety position. Cordell Flott, he has allowed 9 touchdowns himself this season. Cordell Flott, 9 touchdowns himself. I'm not trying to rag on the man, but before the season, we heard a lot about how he would take that starting corner spot over Eli Ricks even. That did not happen. And in fact, Cordell Flott, he has been used out of position a bunch of times when these touchdowns have happened. But there's just too many times we've seen him chasing these big plays. It was the same case with Damone Clark. Bo Pelini made that adjustment when he took Damone Clark out and replaced him with Micah Baskerville. You saw a marked difference in stopping those big gains. Yes, there were big gains all over the place for Arkansas, but they didn't always end in touchdowns like they did with Damone Clark out there. Now, will he make that same move at the back end with Todd Harris? Will he go back to Mo Hampton now that Mo Hampton is available again? That will be interesting. Mo Hampton, he hasn't had the best of seasons. He had a high-octane, awesome 2019. Who knows what type of player we'll see, because that's the thing. Jay Ward, he hadn't really had the best 2020 either. Had a torn meniscus. But he came back, stepped up, and made 2 just unbelievable back-to-back plays to win us that Arkansas game. So LSU could have a lot of different guys stepping up in this game. This may be just a burgeoning rivalry, but this rivalry means a lot to this collection of players. There's a lot of 2017 upperclassmen still around on this team who really want a piece of A&M on their way out.
Christmas is coming, folks. We know that most of you are going to be on Amazon at some point. So grab the link in the description section. Do your Amazon shopping using that link. It's the same exact shopping experience. No different. Doesn't cost you a penny. Helps us build the channel. We got Lon Phillips Sullivan on the line from LSU Odyssey. Lon, we're going to get down to business in regards to some serious off-the-field issues. So you've been working tirelessly in regards to your efforts on your platform in following things here, but it was first reported by USA Today that LSU mishandled, ignored sexual misconduct complaints involving a handful of Tigers players. Former LSU running back Darius Geis was the one big name that was involved in the allegations and that multiple school officials had knowledge of the physical abuse committed by wide receiver Drake Davis as well. What do we know about this? I know that the governor has come out and basically stated that while all of these reported incidents would, of course, if true, are unacceptable, he went on to state that the university will do a full-scale investigation.
Well, they luckily hired an outside independent firm to do this investigation, so there doesn't need to be a worry about the objectivity of that investigation. But it's just really saddening to me that this is even happening at LSU. I remember on your own show a few months back saying that sexual assault outside of Darius Geis wasn't something that I had ever really heard of happening at LSU. And that was the truth. You just never heard of that. But apparently that was the point. We hadn't heard about it. Somewhere there was a chain of command problem where somebody wasn't passing on the information they knew. And we know the names. And I've heard that there will be resignations. Whether those might turn into firings, we'll see. But there are people who need to be held responsible if these allegations are true. And these allegations are widespread enough to the point where we've even spoken to victims ourselves from LSU Odyssey's standpoint. From me, Lon Phillips Sullivan, as a writer, we've talked to victims ourselves. They have spoken and told their stories to us. That speaks volumes about what is happening, not just at LSU, but colleges all over America. There was the double rape accusations, and then I think suspensions of players at Ohio State last year. Jameis Winston's infamous incident with Florida State, that entire saga there. Who knows how this will shake out for LSU? But the point is, there is something disturbing going on in this country when it comes to sexual assault and rape on college campuses. And if LSU has to suffer some type of horrid punishment for the problems and issues of a few who for some reason didn't report these crimes, if LSU has to be the sacrificial lamb to change something about rape culture on college campuses in this country, I will gladly put LSU on the altar myself. I hate to say that, but I think Coach Orgeron would actually agree with that. You know, that's another thing, another point I'd like to make. USA Today got some things really, really wrong on their side. And I'm not saying this as an LSU homer. I'm saying this as someone who cares about the facts. We detailed this in our piece on LSUodyssey.com. Everyone should definitely check it out. It's very impartial. We go through each case. We say what we know. We say what we found out, and we pretty much clear a lot of these cases. But when it comes to USA Today, not talking about Ed Ingram as that seventh player, they detail 6 players that they talk about, but they don't detail the 7th. It's because the case of Ed Ingram doesn't work for their narrative. Ed Ingram was, as a freshman coming into LSU, I believe it was in 2017, he was convicted of felony double aggravated sexual assault, without even thinking, without hesitation. Coach Orgeron believed the victims, and he said, "See ya, you got to go." To Ed Ingram. He suspended him for the entire season. He was gone indefinitely with no promise or return. You know, it was completely in the hands of the justice system at that point. Orgeron pretty much wiped his hands of the situation, just focused on the season and believed the victims. It came to pass that Ed Ingram, his name was cleared. Those charges were cleared. And Ed Orgeron gladly accepted him back, and Ed Ingram was a big part of the 2019 team. The point I'm trying to make here is I don't think USA Today included that story for a reason. They're trying to say that there's a culture around Coach Ed Orgeron, and I just don't believe that. There's a violent culture around Ed Orgeron at that school. I believe that most of these issues were from the Les Miles, Joe Oliva era. If you look at the personnel who are involved, the specific names that USA Today details, and even that we have cleared and verified that USA Today got it right. These names, they don't have specific, exacting ties to Coach Orgeron. Most of these hires are from the Les Miles, Joe Oliva, F. King Alexander days. Whether interim President Tom Galligan will have to answer for some of what's gone down, who knows? But with the Drake Davis case in 2018, that was what piqued my interest the most. And that's what we did the most research into, because that was verified during the Orgeron era. And what we found completely cleared Ed Orgeron. Anytime he had official awareness of Title IX violations, he actually did the paperwork for some of these people who were supposed to be doing it, months, if not a year before. Ed Orgeron stepped up to the plate, and he's doing it again. And I who knows what type of penalties LSU will suffer, but deservedly so if these allegations are true. And we will see. Justice will be done.
Well, I'm incapable of stating it any clearer or more poignant than Lon just has in regards to what should be anyone's stance concerning this versus what could be ramifications against football. Football, we love it. We're passionate about it. Lon certainly is. Jumps on here every week to discuss his beloved LSU Tigers, but now we're talking about people being hurt, being hurt badly, being just impacted, their lives being impacted, their mental state, their bodies, just the abuse itself goes beyond what we should have to. It's just horrible, as you well stated. Any one person that's affected is way too much, but the rampant nature of this and the escalation of it on college campuses, not just at LSU, across the nation, is alarming and needs to be addressed.
Well, and I have no problem taking ownership, though. I would like to ask one question to a certain individual who, women's tennis coach Julia Sell. What were you thinking when you kicked off some of these women from your team after they reported allegations to you? What were you thinking when you're treating these victims like that? I would really love to hear her answer that question. I don't know what her role is in this whole thing. I don't know who was wrong, who was right, but I would just like to know the answer to that question.
Lon Phillips Sullivan, catch him on LSUodyssey.com. I think we've given you enough insight into what he addresses there from a football standpoint to give you motivation and incentive to head on over there. But certainly when we deal with the more weighty issues, Lon is doing his due diligence to cover that to the fullest. Lon, we appreciate you stopping by. Have a great Thanksgiving, and we will catch up with you soon.
Hey, happy Thanksgiving to you too, Mark. 38-26, LSU's going to win. Go Tigers. Sorry, Jimbo.
There it is. Lon Phillips Sullivan on the line talking LSU Texas A&M. We addressed the Florida angle of the hopeful game that we shall see in Gainesville, noon Eastern time on Saturday with David Waters from Gators Breakdown. Now let's get the Kentucky view from Kevin McGuffey, our friend from Last Word on College Football. Kevin, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, Mark. How are things with you?
We're doing okay. I'm hoping to see a football game in Gainesville on Saturday, but I understand that after, correct me if I'm wrong, 10 positive tests, maybe not necessarily just football players, but with the staff included, everybody that counts in last week's game, that figure is now at 18.
Yeah, it's 18. It's 18 players and 10 staff members. So it's actually 28 28 total. So going into the game against Alabama last week, there were 10 players who, they just, UK just said they were out for various reasons. But let's face it, we pretty much know what it was. It was 4 starters. Most notably was Chris Rodriguez, their leading, Kentucky's leading rusher, Jamin Davis, leading tackler. Of course, went into Alabama, and the less we say about that game, the better. I made the comment afterwards that we should all just get the Men in Black. If you remember the Men in Black movie, the little flashy thing, and just go and just forget that game ever happened. But anyway, Coach Stoops, when he addressed the media today, said that there were 18 players who were unavailable, for lack of a better term, and 10 staff members. So they get tested again tomorrow, and then they're supposed to get on the plane Friday morning to head to Gainesville. So depending on what happens with that test, the game, if there are many more players that test positive, then I'd say there's a good chance that the game doesn't happen. But we'll keep our fingers crossed and see what happens. So, but yeah, Kentucky has been lucky this whole season. Had not had any real COVID issues until this past week, and then now it's jumped up and kind of bit them in a big way. So as I said, we'll see. They'll do testing tomorrow, and then we'll see what happens after that about the status of the game.
So, Kevin, this season you're our bowl expert, and so I've got a couple questions for you. And you put together a bowl preview or a bowl projection after that particular weekend's games. So it was stated several weeks ago by the NCAA that they would allow any team to participate in bowl play. Well, if everyone would so choose, that would be 130 teams that would be eligible to play bowls. So we would need 65 bowl games. Well, we know that we've got 40 or 41, and then about 5 dropped their games. I think the most notable was the Holiday Bowl has decided not to play this year, and then there's 4 or 5 others. So we're around 35, 36 bowl games. So that can only accommodate about 70 teams. And I would expect, with the nature of the testing and the health conditions right now, there would be many programs that would just say, we're fine. We're not wanting to play a postseason game. But since it is wide open, regardless of record, do you know how that's going to be handled? If it's just going to go by invite, and how are you making projections? And
well, one thing, the Pac-12, being the Pac-12, they want to do things the most difficult way. I can thank Tony Siracusa for that. For that comment. They're still mandating that you have to have a 500 or better record as of when we're talking now. That may change between now and December 19th. But what I did, we talked about, I think I talked about this last week. 9 of the 14 teams in the SEC have 3 wins or less. So it's a matter of who do you take? So what I did, I left off for the SEC, I left off Vandy, and I left off Mississippi State, and I left off South Carolina this week. And I had everybody else playing in some sort of bowl game. Now I had Alabama obviously in the championship, in the playoff. I had A&M in the Cotton Bowl, and I had Florida in the Peach Bowl. And I'd had Georgia in there before, but I bumped them out last week. And of course, then the selection committee, I'm apparently a bigger fan of BYU than the selection committee is, because I had BYU playing Oregon in the Fiesta Bowl. So, but it's just the first week. I'm still basing it based on, for the most part, I'm not taking somebody that's winless or has won. Somebody's like 1-7 or 1-8. I'm like, okay, no, you have to draw the line somewhere. But I think eventually, what you said is true. You're going to find where people, teams just may not decide it's worth the risk. To some of these smaller, the smaller teams, some of the smaller bowl games. I still think we're going to get maybe 4 or 5 more games canceled before we get to December 19th, which technically the first bowl game is actually December 19th, and the selections are not until December 20th after you play all the conference championship games. So something's got to give. That first game, I think, is the Frisco Bowl. I think I had Houston playing Texas San Antonio in that one. And so somebody's going to have to accept a bid before that, because that's the day before. That's the day before that first. Those bids are supposed to come out. All the selections. So I think we'll probably get 2 or 3 more games canceled. And then, like I said, I think some schools would just decide that it's not worth. Depending on what happens in the next month, to decide it might not be worth the risk. So.
Plus, who in the world's going to be watching the Frisco Bowl or some group of 5 teams play in a bowl game when it's conference championship game week?
Right,
I would think that they do something about that.
Yeah, no, I'm surprised that game is still happening on that day. But yeah, like I said, I've got SEC wise, I have Kentucky in the Liberty Bowl this week. The Liberty Bowl seems to be the game of choice right now for Kentucky. A lot of people have them matched up with West Virginia, which would be a very interesting game. And that may be right now. I have them playing Kansas State, so I kind of based on their standings. First place team goes here, second place team goes here. I know they don't always do that, take that into consideration, but that's how I've been doing it this year. And so, then with the Pac-12, there's only 5 teams that are 500 or better. So. And then the Pac-12, you talk about the Holiday Bowl, the Red Box Bowl. I think there was one more that the Pac-12 had that's out as well. And then the Big Ten is out a couple of games. I think the Quick Lane Bowl, the one they play up in Detroit, and I can't remember the other one off the top of my head. So right now, like I said, I only had 5 Pac-12 teams in there anyway. So like I said, it's been fun. I've enjoyed doing it, and getting some good comments about it, especially now that the selection committee made their decisions. They're their first picks, and how they differ from what we had here. So
we hope to see Kentucky take on Florida at the Swamp, noon Eastern time on Saturday. Kevin McGuffey, last word on college football. Check out his bowl projections following the weekend's play and the rest of the coverage there on Last Word on College Football. Kevin, enjoy the game. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, thank you, Mark. Happy Thanksgiving to you. Have happy and safe Thanksgiving, and everybody out there in Mark Rogers TV land. Hope everybody has a happy and safe Thanksgiving as well.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
All right, we continue on throughout the SEC schedule. We've got Georgia taking on South Carolina. That's a 7:30 kickoff Eastern time on the SEC network. Got our friend Palmer Toms on the line from Dogs 247 Sports to talk up the Dogs. Palmer, how's it going?
I'm doing well, Mark. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm a little bit of a different location this week. I'm home for Thanksgiving, so grateful to be here, and excited to come on and talk college football with you tonight.
Absolutely. So if you had one choice of what name I was going to bring to the table first, I'm only going to give you one guess. Who do you think I'm going to bring up first?
JT Daniels.
So he throws for 401. He throws 4 touchdowns?
4 touchdowns.
4 touchdowns. 401. I did not watch the game play by play. I watched his 2-minute highlight reel. And of course, those are all the good plays, but he certainly stepped up.
Fit it all in 2 minutes?
Pardon me?
They could fit it all in 2 minutes?
I guess so. Maybe I didn't see all the good plays, but I just saw the best ones. So that's what I came down with. Game's still on my DVR. I might go dissect it right after we get done with some pumpkin pie or something. But Palmer, you let us know what you saw from JT Daniels, because it looked mighty impressive to me.
Impressive is exactly how I would describe it. It was fun to watch. Given the fact that Georgia has so much talent around him, and is one of the most talented teams in the country, and with quarterback being the biggest question that Georgia's had this year, it's fun to see, fun to cover a team that puts it all together. And really, they didn't put it all together in that game. The defense struggled, the run game and the offensive line were not what people would expect it to be. Rushing for 8 yards, and I think that factored into Daniels throwing for 401. But, it was really exciting for Georgia fans to see JT Daniels go off for 401 yards, 4 touchdowns, like you mentioned. It'll be very interesting to see how he continues, if he can continue putting up those big numbers. He was very impressive speaking with the media after the game. Unlike Georgia, USC does allow freshmen to speak with the media, so it wasn't his first rodeo talking to people after the games. But he was very impressive, calm, cool, and collected, and I felt like he handled a lot of tough questions really well. Because they were coming his way. Given the fact that, like I said, Georgia has seen subpar quarterback play for essentially the whole season, and especially since halftime of that Alabama game. And Daniels has been on the sideline all the way through. So I think, he was asked the questions about, when were you healthy? Why weren't you out there? Was this a coach's decision? All those questions, those tough questions, he handled them really well. But ultimately, I think his play on the field speaks for himself. And I think, it's something that Georgia fans are certainly excited about.
Was there anything stated by Kirby Smart or even the players, the receivers in particular, that's not just the standard, he had a good game, he made all the right reads kind of thing, but anything that gave anyone a tip off that, they were truly impressed? Anything that stands out to you that was said by Smart or the players?
No, not really. I mean, I think, you get that vibe, maybe from the way that they speak, but not necessarily anything that they say. All the receivers, we spoke with George Pickens earlier this week, and the offensive linemen that we've spoken with, they're going to be, respectful about, what quarterback, whoever's back there. I think that they understand that football is a sport where one guy can go down on one play and you're relying on somebody, the next one. And so if you speak poorly about them, they're not going to have the confidence to come in and step up to the challenge. So I think, like I said, they all were very respectful of Dwan Mathis and Stetson Bennett, but I do think that, you got that vibe from them, that sense that they were excited, to see the change. I think, like I said, there was a lot of, questions about what Georgia's done in the passing game this season. And I think it felt really good for those Georgia players to answer some of those. But, speaking with offensive lineman Justin Schaefer, he was obviously disappointed about the way that the run game worked. And so, I think those two go hand in hand. When you're running the ball well, you're going to rely and for Georgia, they've run the ball well all season long for the most part. And they've really relied on that, given, the fact that they are doing that well and that they aren't quarterbacking well. And Saturday was polar opposite. They were throwing the ball well and they weren't running the ball well. And so, I don't know that anybody expected to see exactly what JT Daniels put up in that game, as his stat line for his debut. But I think, that comes as a factor of he played very well. He, hit on some of those big plays downfield. I think that's an exciting aspect. The explosiveness of this offense is something that, hasn't been missing, but it hasn't been there consistently. They have hit on explosive plays. They Stetson Bennett hit Kyrus Jackson over the top against Auburn. The receivers were breaking open against Florida. They had the 80-yard touchdown against Alabama, James Cook out of the backfield. And so the explosive plays have been there, but they haven't been there as consistently as they were on Saturday night. So I think that's something that excites, Georgia fans and this Georgia team.
I would love to see a stat on when the last time Georgia rushed for 8 yards. I can't imagine that's happened since when Marshall and Gurley stepped on the field since then, and who knows before that. So I'm sure that a lot of that was the byproduct of Mississippi State saying, this is a great running team. We're going to load up the box. JT Daniels hasn't been on a field in over a year, throwing passes in a real game. Let's see what he can do. But are you also concerned about the running game not being more productive than that, regardless of what the defense was doing?
I'm not. I mean, I'm really not, because like you said, this Mississippi State defense was selling out on the run. JT said it after the game. Kirby Smart said it after the game that, that this team was loading the box, was giving them, zero high looks on safeties, and was really challenging Georgia to say, hey, beat us with the passing game. We're not, we know you can run the ball. We haven't seen you pass the ball consistently, and so we're gonna take away what we know you can do, and we're gonna stop that run and force you to beat us over the top. And so I think that you haven't seen teams play Georgia like they did on Saturday, where they load the box and really just take away that run game. I think a lot of things that was happening were, stunts on the defensive line, twists and stuff that, like I said, we spoke with Justin Schaefer. He said that it wasn't necessarily, the looks that the defense was giving them. It wasn't necessarily how the defense was playing. It was more so the looks that the defense was giving them, if that makes sense. More, it wasn't, hey, Mississippi State really stepped up and they were, an incredible defensive line. It was, they were confusing Georgia's offensive line. And so, I think it was a combination of, them loading the box and Georgia being able to pass the ball, that ultimately led to the big passing performance that JT Daniels had. It was interesting to hear Kirby Smart say that, normally if you look at Georgia, they're the team that's gonna, run the ball, run. And, they still tried to, and he said he felt, a little bit bullheaded sometimes trying to run the ball, given the fact that they weren't having the success that they're used to having. So, I think it was, for the most part, I think it was the looks that Mississippi State was giving them, and I think that's not necessarily something that you're going to see from teams in the future, because as Georgia showed, as JT Daniels showed, if you give them, those looks and you give them advantageous, secondary matchups, he's going to make you pay. And so I think, you can't load the box like that and completely abandon the deep end of your secondary, at the expense of, giving up some passing plays, because Georgia showed that they can make you pay for doing that.
I found an answer to my question. Didn't even have to Google it. Our buddy Brent Baird from First Coast News sends me SEC notes that are just like voluminous every day. There's no way you can read all of them. There's just so many. 1996 was last time Georgia had that few rushing yards, 1996. But they went over Mississippi State 31-24, come from behind in doing so. Palmer, I'm going to hit you with this. Give me one player, or you can make it more than one if you'd really like, but at least one player here in the last few games of the season going into the bowl, whether it's like one of those great 5 stars that hasn't really made a huge impact yet, or just somebody that you really see developing on one side of the ball that you really like, that we don't know a whole lot about, but really could step up here in the last few games and really break out then in 2021.
Yeah, and I'm going to go away from JT Daniels, because I think, that's something that we've discussed at length here.
Yeah,
but
please do.
But I do think it's related to him, and that's Jermaine Burton. Had a huge game on Saturday night. 2 touchdowns, believe it was 197 yards, and he was 9 yards away from breaking the single game receiving record. I think if you look at this Georgia passing game, like I said, I'm going to stay away from Daniels here, but, I think that there's a lot to, see and going into next year, you look at who's going to be coming back, just based off of their age and, some guys that, could be coming back because they're likely not going to be big time NFL prospects. But, you look at Burton, like I said, he's, stepping up, continues to progress. Kirby Smart has been, praising him big time since that game, and said, that as you watch him progress throughout the year, he has, there were times that he was missing on blocks that he's now hitting on. He's getting open and he's being hit by the quarterback. So I think, when you look at this passing game in general, I think that's an area that, is something to watch in coming down the stretch, because I think, like I said, I would expect Daniels to be back next year. I know that there was a CBS Sports mock draft that came out today that had him going, I believe it was 16th overall to the Bears, which would really surprise me. He would have to put up, huge numbers for the remainder of this season, it would have to be, almost Cardale Jones-esque. But even him, after he had his, strong final stretch to the season, he came back for another year at Ohio State. But I think in terms of just finishing out this year strong and going into 2021, where, I've mentioned it several times with you, they've got a huge matchup on the table, week 1 with Clemson. The passing game has got to improve. Georgia has shown that they can run the ball. It didn't go their way Saturday night, but I think that they'll make the adjustments that they need to make, and they'll continue to be able to run the ball. If Georgia can pass the ball like they did on Saturday night, and granted, you're probably not going to throw for 400 yards when the rushing game steps back up. But, if they can show that ability that they, as Kirby Smart says, they can be balanced. They can throw the ball anytime that they want to throw the ball. They can run the ball anytime they want to run the ball. And the defense doesn't know if they're going to throw or run any play, any given play. And so I think, given the fact that Georgia does return Burton, who's a true freshman, Marcus Rosemy, Jack Saint, who's a true freshman and will be coming off of had an injury against Florida. Dominic Blaylock will be a redshirt sophomore next season who missed this entire year. He contributed as a true freshman. And so he'll be coming back next year. He tore his ACL at the last game in the SEC championship last year, and then retore that same ACL in the preseason of this year. Pickens will be back. He'll be a third-year player. Kearis Jackson is in all likelihood back. Demetrius Robertson is someone that has the opportunity to come back if he wants to. He's a senior this year, but given the fact that eligibility is not being taken into play this year, he could be back. And so I think all those guys, Arian Smith, he's another one, and someone that I would add to that. If he gets healthy, he's been healthy. Well, he's been banged up and he's gotten healthy over the last couple of weeks, made his first appearance in Georgia uniform. I think it was 1 or 2 plays against Mississippi State. I'll be interested to see how Georgia continues to use him, but he's a speedster, that can really be a contributor in the passing game. I think all those guys coming back, along with a potentially very experienced quarterback, I think it bodes well for Georgia in the passing game entering 2021. Looking at defense, it'll be interesting to see, A, who returns from that defense, and B, who steps up, because they've got a lot of guys that, that have NFL futures in their future. I think Richard LeCount, Jordan Davis, Monty Rice, pretty much that entire outside linebacker room. It'll be interesting to see who decides to return from those players that have been contributors this year. And I think given the fact that Davis has been banged up, LeCount has been banged up, Monty Rice has been banged up, and he's been playing through it. Guys that are filling in for those key role players, guys that have been filling in are going to continue to see their rep counts increase as the season goes along. And especially, with bowl practices are always, such a important time to develop some of those younger players that, you're counting on to be big time contributors, starters in some cases for the next year. I think all these games down the stretch here for Georgia, with the way that the schedule has kind of lightened up for them, with the bowl practices and with the opportunity to, still go play in a marquee bowl game, I think that you're going to see some opportunities for some of those guys that haven't had a huge role this year, step up and earn their spot for 2021.
JT Daniels becoming the first Georgia quarterback to throw for 400 yards in a game since Aaron Murray in 2013. Palmer Thomas on the line, Dogs 247 Sports, breaking it down as the Dogs take on South Carolina, Eastern Division rival there, 7:30 Eastern time in Columbia. South Carolina certainly has its own issues to deal with these days, trying to find a new head coach and try to get back into it in the SEC East. And Palmer, knowing you brought up the Clemson game to start out 2021, knowing college football fans, because I certainly hear my share every day, they're probably not even thinking the last 3 games of the season, the bowl game. You're probably hearing more about Clemson right now than anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing for Georgia is, with the fact that they are out of SEC East contention, out of playoff contention, there's a lot of looking ahead to next season. And with that being the first game, I think Georgia fans are watching and seeing how how they finish the season, how, Clemson finishes the year. And, I think one of the biggest concerns there for Georgia fans looking ahead to that game is that, they've got a quarterback that is, has big game experience already. Getting 2 starts while Trevor Lawrence was out. And so I think, Georgia fans are certainly looking at that, understanding that that game has a lot of potential to define what next year is going to be for Georgia. Obviously, you're still going to play Florida, and you've got to go through the Gators if you want to get to the SEC championship. That rivalry game is likely going to decide the East for the foreseeable future. But I think, in the very similar way that the Alabama game kind of defined this year for Georgia, the fact that you're playing one of those top tier opponents in the regular season, it has a strong possibility of defining how next year goes, and you get that right out of the gate for Georgia. So I definitely think it's on everyone's mind that these last few games you've got an opportunity to kind of groom a team, build up some momentum, and take them into Charlotte next year, for a marquee matchup against Clemson.
Palmer Tom's Dogs 247 Sports. That's Dogs 247 Sports. Join him right there, covering Georgia football. It's the Dogs and the Gamecocks this Saturday night. Palmer, we appreciate you stopping by. Happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy the time with the family.
Thanks. Always thankful to come on, and happy Thanksgiving to you as well.
Thank you so much. All right. That's another SEC Live in the books. That's show number 7. We would like to get a sponsor. Please, if you own a business and you could benefit from exposure here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, or any of our channels or any of our particular shows. So it could be a widespread distribution during our call-in shows, our general college football call-in shows, or team-specific shows. You're an Oregon fan, you're a Kansas State fan, you're a West Virginia fan, you want to do a live show, then all we need to do is get a sponsor. For the current shows right now, unfortunately, they're a bit in jeopardy to a certain extent. Miami, Florida State, Ohio State, and Nebraska, because we need funding to keep those alive. And we need to keep those going with sponsorships. Sponsorships and individual contributions will make that happen. So thank you so much. I am thankful for all of you, what you do here each and every day in talking college football with us, making it happen, being respectful of the people, hopefully in the live chat, and of me, and discussing, debating, and building the vision out here for the voice of college football. So we have a mission to develop a platform here that is the best in discussion, debate, and analysis. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. I will stick around for just a second and look at the live chat, and also let everyone know that you can catch us on Patreon. What you get there for 16 cents a day, to round it off, 16 cents a day, you get the insider look at the voice of college football. And anyone on Patreon, yes, I will get to another video here in the next few days to post an insider look. You get Steve Merrill's pick of the week, his lock of the week, which will be posted here in the next few hours. You get my predictions. You also get our watch parties. They're on Patreon, as well as exclusive live streams per request. That's the caveat. Per request, exclusive live streams. They're on Patreon. Just go to Patreon and search Mark Rogers TV. It is $5 a month. $5 a month to help us build what we need to do here in the next, I will say, year to make this happen here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, and so much that we need to get done through marketing and branding and doing all those things that will make this viable and sustainable for yours truly. So thank you so much for everything that you guys do again. And as Cheryl is pointing out, our trusted moderator, please, on your way out, hit the like button. Thank you so much, Cheryl. Happy Thanksgiving to you as well, and everybody else out there. Yes. Anything else in the live chat? Again, happy Thanksgiving. We have so much to be thankful for. So, it's not been the best of times for many people across this nation and across the world. Do yourself a favor, though. Sit down tonight, just take a few seconds of meditation, and think about everything that you do have to be thankful for. The more you meditate on what you're thankful for, the more your issues, though they have to be dealt with, will minimize, and you'll be thankful for family, friends, blessings, and other ways that we all experience. So thank you so much for that. Thank you for, again, the kind words that I get on a daily basis to say, Mark, you're the best. You're getting it done. Keep it going. Keep grinding. Keep doing this. We love this content. Thank you so much. Never underestimate the impact that you have in commenting to me, whether it be in the live streams or the comments or people that send me personal emails. This happens every day, or I get comments that keep me going. You know, if it just gives me that extra nudge when I don't feel like working an extra hour that day, but somebody says, man, that was amazing content. We love it. Keep it up. Okay, we'll keep going. So thank you so much for that. And again, happy Thanksgiving to everyone watching me right now. Hopefully a lot on the Rewatch Squad. And we will have previews of all the games on Friday and Saturday. More content is coming your way. And we'll be back here at 6 o'clock Eastern tomorrow. Yes, I know it's Thanksgiving, but the Nebraska folks have said that they want to be here. So tomorrow, Thanksgiving night at 6 o'clock Eastern time, Nebraska Live right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football.